We just saw the film of her. Take us through how, step by step, you came up with it and then proceeded to do it, produce it.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about the conceiving process first of all.
Okay, well, it's based on a collection of films called the Paper Print Collection at the Library of Congress. And I admired that collection for a few years just because it encompasses all the early films, but also because of the work that avant-garde filmmakers like Ken Jacobs had done, and where they had to, someone had to reprint all these photographs in order to make them films. So that was of interest to me because I was interested in how photographs make films and how paintings make films and how film is really a whole combination of pictures that go by and give the appearance of fluidity. So this collection by itself had this importance to me as like because it was more than a film collection; it was a photograph collection, and it was
history. Right?
It was history, yeah. And
how did you find out about the collection? Where were you introduced to that?
I think I think I saw Ken Jacobs' film Tom the Piper somewhere. There in the program notes it mentioned that a guy named Kemp Niver had rephotographed the paper print collection, and then as I started to do more research about it, I thought I might do a film about this guy Kemp Niver with his camera and his crazy idea of having to rephotograph every picture in order to make history, because you couldn't project these things without them being on film. And so in a way it was the archivist's job who was saving it. He was playing God in a way, so I thought that would be a really interesting character to get into. So I did some research, looking in the library for related works and stuff, and this guy had written this, Patrick Lockney had written his thesis at the University of Michigan about this, and I sent for it from Ann Arbor, and they had it was a bound thesis, and it started going through the history of this collection, and it mentioned this clerk, and he had found this thing, and
real hero.
Yeah, and he had been completely, like Niger was given this Oscar, and this guy was like a footnote in someone's thesis. So I was like, this guy's a real trip, because he has been forgotten. He was the photograph that wasn't rephotographed, So. As fate would have it, you can find these guys in the phone book. Like you call up, the Santa Barbara directory, and they, you can find an 80-year-old guy in an apartment somewhere in Southern California. So, just like what you did, I went out there. Yeah, I found both of them and talked to them within days of each other, and they can't stand each other. The two guys. They're one. The guy who found it was kind of like didn't know too much about film, but he wanted to appear, sort of academic. And the guy who'd actually reshot it, he was like a private dick in Hollywood during, Howard Hughes' studio, and he'd had affairs with Ava Gardner, and he was like a Hollywood stud, and he didn't want to hear about the other guy, and so between the two of them, it was a real contrast. They were both 80 years old. One was living on Hollywood Boulevard. One was living like right outside of Santa Barbara. So in '92, I guess I was driving through California, and I had a video camera with me, and I taped both of them. And Walls actually would not let me take the lens cap off the camera because he had a head cold that day, and he thought he didn't look that good, So I just had his voice, and so I drove. The girl I was living with at the time, I would drive her crazy because I became him, I would start like re-quoting the things he said about time and, talking in his voice and stuff. And, when it came time to find someone to play him in the film, I just, it was natural that it would be me, because also that's what I do with film. I re-photograph pictures,
Let me know. So how did that idea, that research come to the point where you were going through stock footage? I mean, tell us how it got to stock.
So I guess since it's about archival film, I thought, and I didn't have a picture of this guy, you know, because he had the lens cap on it. I went out to the ocean that night and had a beer and started thinking, what can I do with this story? And I realized it would be much more pure if it was told using archival footage to tell this story about archival footage, and then that way this guy could be every man. He could be the little kid in the train station, he could be the old man, the train at the end. He was just, he was a piece of history, you know. So in that way, I started to go forward from there, and I just started. I wrote a big, long, terrible screenplay, you know, with a love interest in the whole thing that I tried to, you know, flaunt around for a little bit. And when it came down to distilling what still really interested me in the project, it was these interviews, you know, and the way he turned a phrase and the nostalgia, and sort of just the infinite possibilities of what could have existed that we don't know about, and that raises the question: did it exist at all? Did this guy exist at all? You know.
At the beginning, when you say about the tree falling in the woods.
Exactly. Yeah. So I would go down to Washington and you know, on my own dime, and go to the Library of Congress, go to the National Archives, and I'd have a list of things that would, like, I knew I was going after film, or I was going after the process of making paper, you know. I was going after anything to do with libraries.
So how long? So you went there, and how long did it take you? I mean, you had the topics. I mean, you would present them. With you know, you want trees or
and a lot of times
film processing, and then they would give you that. And then you
they can steer you in the right direction. They can say this stuff is public domain. You know, this stuff you're going to end up paying for. This, you know. Here's how you do it. Someone will show you how to work your way through there, but they're pretty hands-off there. Then you get a bunch of call numbers, and they give you a list of labs who they deal with, and you know, then you call up the lab. And I have to plug Joe Bono in Virginia. He was a great lab technician. He made some beautiful prints for me at a very reasonable price. So since I didn't have to pay, and a lot of this stuff was public domain, and, you know, there are taxpayers, we've been paying for this footage all along, you know. We all own it, you know. It was an easy film to put together from that standpoint. And then there was some stuff that was you know, had to have licensed to me, you know. So, but people are pretty understanding when you tell them exactly what you want to do, you know.
How long did it take you to edit it? I mean, getting all the stock footage.
Yeah, I mean,
did you have an idea of what the structure?
Yeah, I had an idea that the structure was, but it was getting to be burdensome because I'd carried it around with me for so many years, you know, and it was like a Bill and his paper print movie, you know. We gotta hear this spiel again, you know. But I was real fortunate. The timing was good. I'd gotten a fellowship to work with director Godfrey Reggio in Italy. And Godfrey was employed by the Benetton Corporation for a project called Fabrica. But right before I got out there, Godfrey left, and so I was sort of in Italy without a real project. And so I called up my friends and said, you know, there's a box underneath my bed that had like all my selects, and I was like, ship that to me, you know. And there I was in Italy for like 9 months, and the fog rolled in, you know, and I had a little 6-plate editor, and I was able to compile all this stuff. So, I mean, I worked on other projects at the same time. I finished like 3 other short visual videos, but that was sort of the thing that would get me up in the morning every day, you know, and I just edit this thing on film. And eventually, when I got it down to 2 hours, I would made a video transfer, and then that got knocked down to 12 minutes just by the processes of, you know, speeding everything up and clipping it, you know.
How much of it is, from what this gentleman told you and spoke to you about, how much of it is true that you put in?
Okay, well, I'd say everything is true except the part about the pornographic star. That's not true. So that was my own
I think
liberty.
You mentioned that at the library interview. And speaking of the library interview, that's where I saw you and I saw the film. And when you were answering questions, a gentleman asked a question. The first question was, what is the film of her? What is the title? When people ask you stuff like that, after you've worked on something like this,
right,
and people like this, they don't see the whole thing, or it doesn't get them like that. How does that? Is that a frustrating thing for you? Or do you deal with that? Do you take that in stride?
Well, no, I mean, yeah, I don't know. Some ways, it makes me think how I could have done the film differently, so the guy wouldn't have had that question. You know? Really? Yeah, sure. And obviously, it's not the type of film everybody's used to looking at, but there was a lot of images whipping by, and the film of her is the central, image, and for some reason it was lost on him. I got to take that for what it is. I get a lot of good feedback about the film, and then I get sometimes, I went
for everybody, I guess.
I went out to a college in Pennsylvania and took a bus 3 hours and showed my films, and then afterwards everybody's like. And I was like, okay, well, if you do have any questions,
email me.
So, I realized that I've taken a path where, I'm not making Air Force One exactly here, and by choice or not, my films aren't going to be accessible to everybody. At the same token, I think, I'm still working on my craft. I do want to improve as a writer and as a filmmaker, and storytelling is about that. And if I can make something clear the next time, I'll definitely remember that guy going, "What was the film of her?" so that I'm not there next time.
Speaking about next time, what's up next? What are you doing now?
I got a couple things going this year. First of all, I'm going to show all my films at Anthology Film Archives, and that'll be the first weekend of May. I think it's May 1st and 2nd, or April 30th. Everything I've done, which is about 90 minutes, which is at 2nd Street and 2nd Avenue here in the East Village. And then I'm doing a few things. One thing is I'll be taking that same program around the country, starting in March and in Los Angeles, and then I'm going to be hitting 7 different venues. One's Albuquerque, San Antonio, Austin, Shreveport, New Orleans, and Chicago, which is where I'm from. And
now, what is this? Is this some kind of a thing somebody set up?
Oh no, I set it up.
You set it up?
But it's sort of a circuit. It's like a brotherhood of these types of films, And so they say, "Oh, have you talked to the guy in Shreveport yet?" And I say, "Yeah, I'm talking to the guy in Shreveport." And
connected,
yeah, and it's cool. It's a path that.
Meet a lot of people.
Meet a lot of people, and what I'm thinking is that I'll shoot some film there, and I'm developing a script that will allow me to shoot a road film then. And a lot of my footage that I shoot has to do with traveling, road footage and train footage and stuff.
Two birds there.
Yeah, exactly. Well, to go around trotting around films you've done can kind of get a little bit like, this is what I've done. You want to be working on something new to get the juices going. I mean, it's great. It's great to show your stuff, but it's also you got to keep working.
Yeah, right. What about long term? 10 years. What do you got? Where are you? What are you doing?
I don't know. In 10 years, I'll be 42. I'll definitely be making films still.
Are the same kind of films?
I would think that even if I'm reaching a hopefully broader audience, that I'm still incorporating a lot of the same elements, in it. I saw Jules and Jim last night, Truffaut film, and he's using this same paper print footage to make a story that's set in 1912. He's freeze framing with optical printing on the girl's face. There's a lot to be done in this method still. And there's I just think that there's a lot of different ways to tell a story, and that we're getting more and more media at our disposal, and I think we're getting more sophisticated as viewers in how this guy at the public library aside of how to receive a story. Yeah. And so I think I'm going to still try to challenge the medium. That's what interests me, is somehow using the medium to tell a story about the medium, and therefore about us, about our lives and the way we receive information and stories.
That's great. Good luck with that. All right, time's up.
We there?
Good, yeah.
Cool.
Keep on going.
That's it for this week. Come back next week, another great short film. Don't forget to check out Bill's retrospective of his works at the Anthology Film Archives in the beginning of May. Probably going to be the first weekend in May, I think he said. Check that out. Should be interesting. We're going to see a lot more from him.